right, we'll go ahead and get started for folks so we can make sure we can end on time tonight. I'm so excited to have you all here. I know it's a busy time. I know many of Newman's messaged me, said it's midterms and they can't make it, but hopefully they'll be watching the recording. But really grateful for you all for the gift of your time and your presence and always just showing up together to talk about a topic that I think I really loved diving in with Newman's in the past. And I think it's also a really important topic, particularly as you all get into more hectic parts of your year, but also as you face different challenges as you go into the spring semester and then into the professional workforce or graduate school for what's next. So tonight's workshop again is going to be focused on values in volatile times or the value-based leadership. And we're going to get to a little bit of what that means and sort of the takeaways for y'all, what we're going to do. But a little bit of what we're going to do tonight together. First, going to do the welcome as always. We're going to ground together. We're going to connect together as Newmans, tell you what the goal and purpose is, and then connect with one another. The second thing is we're going to talk a little about our values, like what exactly do we mean by values? Where do they sort of come from? And then we're going to have an exercise where you all are actually going to have to sort of define your own values for you as a leader. Then we're going to talk a little bit about values-based leadership and what does it look like. We're going to talk about a theory called the social change model of leadership. And we're going to talk about how values-based leadership sort of looks like in practice by doing the exercise together and actually practicing it as Newmans. What does it actually look like? And then we'll finally wrap up with any final questions, some final resources if you're interested in this topic to dive deeper, and then a couple of reminders. So again, that's sort of our roadmap for tonight. My goal is to get us out of here by 8 o'clock Eastern sharp. So we will give you all back the rest of your time. But that's what we're going to sort of do to spend our time together. As always, you can leave the camera off if you want to. I just ask if you can, please be active in the chat so I know that everyone's participating and I don't call on you and you're just like walking away or walking your dog or something. All right. So with that, though, a couple of reminders in terms of our community agreements. So for those who are at the Newman Convening, you've seen this before. For those who've not been at the Newman Convening, this may be the first time you've seen this. But we have basically 3 agreements we want everyone to follow when we're together in space, either virtually or in person. The first one, as always, is to be excellent to each other. So what we mean by that is that each of you are a Newman. All of you deserve to be here and in this space, regardless of your background, your prior experience, your political ideology, whatever it is. All of you belong here equally in this space, and we want you to remember that you do belong in this space. We want to also help you remember that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. This is one of the few times you get to be in a room, virtual or in person, with other leaders who are passionate about this and in a similar stage of life often. So take advantage of this opportunity. We want you to make sure when we're having conversation, we do a yes and approach where we're building longer tables, meaning like we're including more people and saying, yes, that's a good idea, and let's build off of it, versus a higher walls concept, which is sort of isolating yourself or saying, no, that's not good. You're not really part of me. And then there's a good question that I always like to ask considering this is that tonight's group, no matter the size, no matter who's in the room, what is the conversation that only this group can have in this moment? So whatever questions you have, whatever curiosities, whatever experience, just trust whatever you're bringing in the space is what's needed in the space. And let's have a conversation that we can only have with this group together. And then finally, just always remember you represent more than yourself. You don't only represent your university, but you represent your family, your community, and the people who've stood behind you and stand beside you now. The second one is treat everyone with respect. Sorry, that's my dog. She's not treating me with respect right now. Anyway, but treat everyone with respect, and that means make sure you step up and step back in spaces so everyone has a space to contribute, that everyone respect that everyone learns and participates differently. So some of you are going to be really extroverted. That's great. Unmute, basically dive deep. Some of you are going to be introverted. Some of you are going to want to write or do in the chat. However you participate is fine, but I want everyone to be active in the space. And then also prioritize care for yourself. So if you need to, just make sure you actually go to the restroom, take a step away. If you need to be off camera or you're tired of looking at the screen, you can just listen in, take care of yourself with this. And lastly, take responsibility again for the space we want to do to show up fully. So be an active participant, as I've said, be curious. We're going to look for common lessons together as a group, but if anyone shares something really insightful, you always want to take the lesson but leave the story. Okay, so when someone's saying something really beautiful, you don't want to go back and share specifics without asking the permission, but you can take the lessons and apply it in your own life. And then finally, if something does happen or someone says something out of pocket that you really don't resonate with and you try to be curious, you always call in first if their impact you feel like it does not match their intent. But also, if you feel like something's going on that's really way out of line, let me know and we can also address that as well. So those are sort of the community guidelines. Any questions on that before I keep going? All right. Okay, so let's get to the workshop goals. So tonight's focus on value-based leadership. We want you to sort of understand the broad concept of values. Where do they come from? Why do we even have them? We're going to reflect again, as I said, on our personal community values, explore the challenges that actually come from a value-based leadership mindset, and then also learn the importance of congruence in the social change leadership model, and how we can actually use these for positive change going forward. So that's sort of the framework for tonight and why we're doing this. But for now, we're going to do our connection piece. So in the chat, what I love everyone to do, I'm actually going to add one to this. I want everyone to put your name, your pronouns, your school, as well as a one. Okay, here's what I want. I want your one word that describes describes a value you admire in a leader. But then I also want you to put your favorite candy right now. It's Halloween season. I've not bought candy for kids in my neighborhood yet. I need recommendations. So those are the two things: name, pronouns, your school, and then one word that describes a value of a leader, a value you admire in a leader, and then what's your top candy in terms of giving it away. All right. Go ahead and put that in the chat for a little bit. I'll give everyone a minute or so to do that, and then we'll go from there. Okay, this is good so far. Wow, y'all are a sour crowd right now. This is interesting. Nerd clusters, interesting. All right, interesting. This is really insightful. I'm really loving your reflections of this overall. I'm seeing some commonalities. We see things we admire in a leader: humility, consistency, being influential, helping other people get involved, patience, compassion, curiosity or class. I like that. Open mindset, encouraging, integrity. Absolutely. Talk about that. Courage. Okay. Love this curiosity. Seeing the theme of that. Courage. Oh, Sophia with a classy candy. I like that. All right. And then let's see, integrity. Absolutely. Okay. You all and your candy surprised me. Okay. So Sour Patch Kids are in, Nerd Clusters, Crunch Bars. Are Crunch Bars really popular? Is that like a thing now? I guess so. But at least with Newman's, this is great. I love a good Crunch Bar. Not no shade on Crunch Bars. I love a Crunch Bar. I'm glad to see they're back in style. That's good. As a '90s kid, some of the stuff went out of style. So, all right, Deja, what we got here? This is inspiring. Love that. Okay, cool, y'all. So I appreciate that and that sort of reflection going into that. Does anyone want to make a really hard sell for either? Let's see. Let me do this. I'd love to have one person come off mic to say what is the value you look for in a leader, and like maybe can you name the leader who you think actually does that? So if you have like, hey, my leader I'm thinking of was my mom or the dean of my school or the social justice organizer in my community. Who's the person you think of when you think about that value? And then I want one person to come off mic and really make a really hard advocating case for your candy and why I should buy $40 worth of that candy. All right. So we're going to do the value one first because that's hard. That's a little more vulnerable. We're going to lean into it. And then we're going to do the candy one. All right. Everyone understand? Okay. So first, when I let one person come off mute and say, hey, this is the value I thought of, and this is who I thought of when I said the value. And I'll wait. See who wants to go first. All right, go. And you don't have to, you just come off mute. You don't have to put your hand up or anything.
I put patience I feel like that's a really good quality for leaders to have just because you're dealing with so many different things and like working with so many different people. Um, and I was thinking of one of my professors actually when I thought of that. I think that he just does a really great job of like leading a room and, capturing college students' attention in the best way he can.
Love that. That's awesome, Kaylee. Make sure you tell your professor that. That's really sweet. Tell them that before midterms too, before they grade. Be like, just letting you know. I'm you did the call out. All right, I love that. Anybody else want to go on the value? Someone you thought of when you said your value? Anybody else we want to shout out? Yeah, Emma, go ahead.
I can go. So I had said humility, and the person I thought of was actually the leader of an after-school program where I did a lot of tutoring in high school. He came into the role after the previous leader had passed away, and it was
Mm.
really big shoes to fill. And, he's transformed the program in like the best way possible. And yet sometimes the conversation still tends to be about the man who had passed away who founded the organization. But like watching him not care and continue to do the fabulous work, like almost in the shadow, I just admire him so much for like doing the work for the good of the work and not for like the recognition. And then another reason I had kind of said humility is like today in one of my public health classes, actually, like we had a guest speaker from the public health department, and they said a program is only as successful as the trust that you have with the community. And I feel like that's
Mhm.
applicable in like a lot of areas. And to me, like what builds trust is like humility and like connecting and not being afraid to be like vulnerable. So yeah.
Love that. Thanks, Emma. Those are both great, and I think be the ability to be humble to like what's the work you do when no one else is watching, and also not being about just me doing the work, but like about the mission itself. I think is really beautiful and absolutely builds trust. All right, I'll take one, no more than two volunteers to advocate for your candy.
I will go ahead and be the sponsor for Crunch Bars here. I think I have two words here, simplicity and texture. Okay. You've got the amazing simplicity of like a milk chocolate Hershey's bar. You can't beat milk chocolate Hershey's bar, but the one thing it's missing is a nice like crunchy texture like you would get from a Twix, and the Crunch Bar gives you that. So, simplicity, texture, it gives you the best of both worlds.
I like that, Harris. That's good. Also, mad respect for you coming off the mic so fast. You're like, I've got to get in. I got to get in here. I love it. One other person. We have someone to represent the sour community. We have quite a bit of you who like sour nerd clusters, gummy bears, etc. Can we have a Sour Patch Kids that's also on there? Do we have someone to represent the sour community? Why sour candy is the best candy right now?
I can do it.
All right.
Would love to represent the sour community. I chose Nerds Gummy Clusters, because like I'm just a sour person, but also I would like to say the texture is just vastly superior. Because you've got like a little bit of like the gummy texture, but you've also got like the nerds in there. And then I think as well, it's just like an explosion of flavor in your mouth, you know? Like I would be a walking nerds ad if they asked me to, probably.
I like that. The explosion of flavor,
Yes.
great, great thing. And also, you never know. You all can also do name, image, and likeness deals. So don't give up on that. You could be a walking nerds ad. You never know. All right. If you do, let us know though, because we all want to get in on that. So please let me know. I gladly will let Nerds be the sponsor of Newman or Crunch Bars. Really, any candy based. Well, actually, ethical candy based places. We'll see. Anyway, I digress. All right. So let's talk about what actually values are. So this is going to be really common sense. I know a lot of like Will, we sort of generally know what values are, but just to ground us in the space, I really like this definition from Brene Brown and her values-based leadership in Daring Greatly. And she talks about a value is a way of being or believing that you hold most important in the world. So again, it's a way of being how you show up or believing that you hold what you believe in terms of your who you believe in, how you believe in them, that you hold most important in the world. So when we think about values, often the things that come to mind are first like a principle or a standard of behavior, right? So if you're leading by a certain value, we value respect, we value dignity, oftentimes when we think about values, we sort of think a little bit like the ground rules we did at the beginning, right? What are the values base of the organization? Oftentimes schools have this because they say, well, we want everyone to be, curious, or we want everyone to be humble is a good one. Curious, humble, hardworking, etc. But on a personal level, it's also your own personal judgment about what's most important to you in life. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. But one of the big keys and why I like value-based leadership is that value-based leadership is not dependent upon even your situation necessarily, or your title, or your income class, or any stage of life. Your value-based leadership is what's important to you in your life, in this season of life, whatever it is. And it's only you can sort of determine that. And so what I really like about this is that value-based, someone once told me, like, Will, at the end of the day, the one thing people can't take from you is your integrity of embodying the values that you claim to hold. Like, what people will notice is if you're about what you talk about or if you're not about it. But then one thing they can't take from you, regardless if they can fire you from a job, reject you from a grad school application, etc., they can't take the way you show up in the world and what you value within that. So that's why I think also when we think about values, where they originate from, they often come from a lot of different places. So some of us get it from our family. Maybe you saw your parents work and really embody the value of kindness and being welcoming to everyone in the community. Some of it is cultural, of course. Certain cultures say, okay, our most important value is discipline and making sure you are maintaining our traditions and showing up discipline, regardless if you enjoy it or not. The short-term discipline is going to have long-term reward. Some of values come from life experience. Often, I'm going to bet that most of you all have some sort of experience that when you think about your own values, you're like, hey, I learned this from this experience as playing sports as a child, or being a musician and a teenager, or going to a really transformative trip and really being moved by an act of kindness or something I saw. So life experiences has a major role to play. Religion obviously has a major role for a lot of folks as well, depending if you're religious or even just spiritual. Oftentimes, a religious text, particularly in the more traditional religions, have major values that they say if you're going to be a believer of this religion, we're going to base on live your life according to these values. And then finally, again, it's just sort of personal beliefs. Sometimes you just have a value that just resonates with you, and you may not even know why. Like, it could be from your family, it could be from your culture, it could be something else, but you're just like, this is just sort of who I am and what I just sort of genuinely believe to be true. And that's okay as well if you don't really have a clear definition of that. But these are the sort of the things when we think about values, what we're sort of talking about. So again, for tonight's basis, where we're going to talk about values, when we're talking about value-based leadership, we're going to talk about the things that matter most to you in the world, that are, again, ways of being or things you believe in that you hold dearly, that you want to center in your leadership. That's going to be sort of the shorthand definition we're going to go with. Okay, so real brief, like, why are values important? Why the heck why do we choose this as a workshop for you all in this time? So I'm going to give you a few reasons early on, and then we're going to get into more tangible discussion. The biggest thing I think the values are allowing us to do is values are things that cultivate authenticity. You all know when people are not acting like their most authentic self. And oftentimes, when they're not acting like their most authentic self, it's because they're acting out a value or a way of being that's not really true to who they are or what they're about. So, by sort of knowing our values, embodying our values, we're able to build trust by being just true to ourselves. So, people think, okay, you know what? That's really what Joshua values. I can see that. And he sort of acts that out every day. Values are also really great anchors. There's a lot of times, particularly in as a student, when you maybe feel overwhelmed, you feel uncertain, you really don't know what to do. And what is always tempting in those times of overwhelm is like just do the next thing or just do what someone else tells you to do, etc. But what's harder to do is like to take a step back and say, actually, wait, what are the values I have and how do I want to show up in this moment? So values can serve as an anchor to help ground you when you're not sure where to start somewhere. So if you're not sure where to start in a social interaction or in a club or in a new job, whatever it may be, you're like, how do I want to show up? Values can serve as a sort of a good anchor spot to sort of first reflect on and think about how you want to begin to show up in a situation. Integrity was already mentioned a lot for folks. And again, we're talking about integrity and congruency here in a little bit. But basically, integrity is the ability to align your actions and your decisions with your beliefs. It's basically that you're willing to do what is hard and not what is easy when when the time calls for it, but your values are what sort of serve as that directional. But also integrity also means that you're also going to be consistently practicing this over and over again. Integrity or values is not a one-time thing. It means that like if you say my value is courage, it doesn't mean you're automatically always courageous. The integrity part of values is you have to keep practicing it over and over again as much as you can. Resilience has already hit on this a little bit. Again, values allow us to be resilient, to stand firm, even when people disagree with us or they don't like us. If we can be true to our values and what we believe, we can say, hey, I understand you're not happy with me. I understand you don't like this, but I had to be true to me in the moment and what my values are. People cannot like you, but they can respect you. And oftentimes values can give you that resilience to say, I at least was true to myself. And then lastly, they provide some vision. So again, if you all have ever been with a leader who helps provide a really clear vision, oftentimes it's not just what's the purpose of the organization. They often have values of the culture they want to create within the organization. So that having values allows you to not only sort of have a direction, but allow you to sort of cultivate the charisma and the culture that want people to help you follow that vision. So that's again very shorthand, but like going over, okay, what are we talking about when we say values and why exactly are they important? The authenticity, the integrity, the resilience, the vision that they allow us to have, and the way they can serve as an anchor are why we're always good, why we want to say values are important for us to cultivate. All right, so moving on from that though, the biggest thing I'm going to say for values is that particularly for you all, what I tell students all the time is like you all came into a really remarkable, really, really difficult time. You all went through a pandemic. You all have gone through multiple social movements all across the ideological political spectrum. You all have come into a time where like AI is drastically coming at a speed, which is both enticing but also scary. And you all have grown up in a time where there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of polarization, a lot of fearfulness. And none of you all chose the time you're born in. None of us do. We don't get to choose it. But the thing about values and the thing about value-based leadership, why I believe in it so much, is that even though we do not choose the time period or the challenges that come our way, what values allow us to do is they allow us to choose how we wish to respond. So when you have something happen to you, you cannot necessarily always predict, nor can you control the things that happen to you. But through centering our values in our leadership and our day-to-day life, we can choose how to respond. And that's the goal of what we're trying to talk about today is what are the things that are most important to you as leaders and as people. So when life does throw things at you, when circumstances do throw things at you, you can say, you know what? I didn't choose this. And this is a challenge that I wasn't even planning or equipped for, but I know how and what I want to respond from. And that's my value-based leadership. So with that a little bit, I'm now going to actually have us dive into choosing our values and what this looks like. All right, I'm going to preface this with two things. One, some of you are about to not like me for the next 3 minutes, and that's okay, because you know why? One of my values is integrity with the PowerPoint. And also, I think it's a good exercise. Number two, there's going to be two different ways we're going to do this. So if you feel overwhelmed by the first exercise, don't worry about it. I've got a simpler one that's coming at for you. All right. So the first exercise is here's what we're going to do. I'm going to share a list of values on the screen. You all have 90 seconds, and I will time you, 90 seconds to choose the 5 values that most resonate with you. The 5 values that most resonate with you. Now, my personal advice, skim it, pick out the ones that sort of jump out to you. And then if you have more than 5, ask which ones are the most foundational. Like which ones, if, for instance, if integrity is a foundational value for me, my ability to act courageous first comes from my integrity. So I have to act in line with my actions, and courage comes from that. All right. So ask again, skim. If you have more than 5, ask what's foundational. All right. I'm going to put a timer on. Is everyone ready? 3, 2, 1, go. 5 words. Jonathan, the question on how do you know which ones are foundational is a good way to ask that is it's not a black or white science, really. It's going to be more around, okay, which thing you try to ask yourself which value almost comes first. If I was in a hard situation, which one would come first? So again, if I was to say like faith and gratitude are my two biggest values, and I'm not sure which one to choose, well, my faith is what really inspires my gratitude. So faith for me in this circumstance came first. That's an example of that. All right, about 45 more seconds. Twenty-five more seconds. Ten seconds. Five, four, three, two, one. All right, stop. Does everyone have it? Does everyone get five? I know some of you are going to hate me. You're like, I don't know, Will. I just chose five random ones. That's fine. Okay, again, you're really not going to like me, but it's going to be fine. We're going to do this. We're going to push through. You're going to like me on the other side of this, okay? I promise. All right, so the next one, you got your five core values, right? You're like, okay, here's five that I think really resonate with me. Like, this is it, all right? I'm about to ask you to do something that's even a little bit harder. I'm now going to give you 1 minute, and I want you to choose your top two. I want to give you 1 minute to choose your top two. Now, again, there's no judgment on these values. If you had chose the first five on this list, that's great. I'm not saying one value is better than the other, but if at the end of the day, someone came up to you and said, hey, what are your top two values or the things you're trying to sort of lead from right now? What are the top two things? All right. Ready? I'm gonna give you 1 minute to choose your top two. All right. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Thirty seconds. Ten seconds. Five, four, three, two, one. All right. Has everyone got it? You have your top two? Yeah? Okay. For those folks who are off screen, give me emoji if you got your top two. All right. Cool. Appreciate that. All right. So here we're gonna do. All right. So these are the top two. Now, some of you are like, Will, I hated that. That was the worst thing I've done today. And I've done some really bad things. I don't like it. All right. So here's the thing. There's another fun little thing we're going to do. I'm going to drop it in the chat. For those of you like, I don't do this. I like BuzzFeed quizzes better. Don't you worry. I got a BuzzFeed quiz for you, basically. You're going to take this quiz. It's 20 things. It's literally selecting on a scale of 1 to 5, 20 different statements. And it's a values generator. I did this earlier. It's interesting. It may give you a value you expect or don't expect. The one thing I'm going to tell you though, read the instructions because it says on a level 1 to 5, 1 is how much does this statement resonate with you? 5 is if it doesn't. So typically most scales are the opposite. Here 1 is yes, that's very much like me, and 5 is like no, that's not like me. Okay, this is only 20. So I'm gonna have you all do it. Take a couple minutes to do this. And then when you're done, I want you to compare the values that this little quiz has told you, and then your top 2 values. And I want you to ultimately come to me with your top 3 values total. All right. It could be 3 from your original list, or it could be a combination of this. All right. Does everyone understand? All right. Take a couple minutes, fill this out. And then when you're done, I want you to put in the chat your top 3 values combined from these 2 exercises. All right, again, when you're done, you can look at your results. If you like one of the values from the results, you can put it in the chat, but you ultimately are going to send me 2, no more, or 3, up to 3 values that you've selected. Like these are the top 3 values for me. It could be, again, the 2 from the first exercise and 1 from the results, or some sort of combination. It's up to you. And when you're done, put it in the chat. Okay, so now what I want to do though is I want to, justice. Oh, I like that one too. And harmony. Awesome. Okay, these are great, y'all. I'm seeing a lot of commonalities within folks as well. All right, so now that we're actually though sort of thinking about, okay, you sort of have here are the values that resonate with me. Like these are the things I think I want to stand for the most, right? Which is beautiful. And we love that. The harder thing though is to actually put them into practice. And what does this actually look like? So what we're going to do now actually is I'm going to actually divide you all up into small groups. You're going to be in groups of 3, no more than 4. And I'm going to give each of you a scenario that you have to then apply your values to this scenario. All right. And these are very real scenarios that actually have happened before or have happened on campuses, etc. But what I want you all to do is I'm going to again have you first. I'm going to have you first reflect on this sort of individually, and I'm going to have you talk about it, okay, collectively. So actually, you know what I'm going to do to make this a little bit simpler because I realize like the chat will not go to everyone. I'm going to tell you what room you're in, and then from there, I'm going to tell you your prompt. Okay, so you can go ahead and start thinking about this. All right. So room number 1. All right. Okay. Well, actually, no, I can't do this. Okay, never mind. Scratch that. I'm going to put you in your rooms first, and I'll come to your room and tell you the prompt. Okay? All right. We're going to spend 10 minutes for this value simulation. All right, y'all. See you in a second. All right, everybody. Okay, so what we're going to do real quick is I will have one person from each group. I'm going to call on you, actually, because I've looked who it was, to tell me what did y'all decide to do? Briefly describe your scenario. What do you decide to do, and how do you feel like it was in line with your value-based leadership approach? So for group one, let's see, I had down, let's see, who was, let's see, Deja, can you hear me? Deja, if you can hear me. You're the lucky one I randomly chose in your group. Explain to everyone what was the scenario, what did y'all choose, and why do you feel like it was value-based leadership?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, you're great. Go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, so group one, so our scenario was basically we were the CEO for a manufacturing company, and safety regulation um has came into effect, whereas it will cost our company to kind of lose millions of dollars, and other companies decided to not to comply because it will cost them, well, they chose not to comply, and simply because they felt like paying the fines would be like a better route and it would become much cheaper. But if we were able to follow through, like follow the law, then the company may not be able to afford to keep as many employees on the company, which can potentially lead to layoffs. And ignoring the regulation, this can also endanger the company's safety. So what we decided is to basically, well, the core values we decided was integrity and transparency, um due to the fact being that we want to make sure that we're being transparent as possible and ensuring that we're still following through with doing the right thing, even though it could possibly affect the company's future moving forward.
Yeah, that was great, Deja. I really appreciate that as well. And absolutely, it's like transparency is like that's it was important. We had to act within our integrity. We had to be transparent and own up to it as well. All right, group two. Let's see. I wrote down randomly Crystal. I'm going to explain the situation. I'm putting it in the chat for everyone to read, just for time. But Crystal, if you would love to hop off and tell us what you ended up doing. So group two, they were a university president and they had a controversial speaker on campus. Half the campus wanted them to come, half of the campus did not want them to come, and it was a hard decision, and it was ultimately their call. So, Crystal, if you can come off mute and let us know what y'all chose and why.
Okay, so we chose so basically we kind of had to figure out what the situation was exactly. So we did have one member in our group that went to a private university and other ones that went to public. And we all kind of consensusly agreed that most of the time when speakers come on a campus, they have to go through kind of a vetting process in order to say, to let us know what you're going to say. So assuming that we told them not to say certain inflammatory things that would marginalize someone and they did anyways, and that's what, CNN got, because we were supposed to write the reply to CNN based on that. We basically, what were the values? Transparency, accountability, equality. So we wanted the speaker to come initially, because we wanted everyone's views, even though it was, a different view than what we thought. We wanted them to come and we wanted them to have a voice, but we also wanted to put a hard line at marginalizing and inflammatory statements. And I think if we did tell them that, but they still said it and CNN got a hold of it, we would just reaffirm our campus values and say that, we apologize for this. We want every student to have a voice. That's what we were attempting here, and it failed. And then invite the speaker to never come back. Yeah, I think that would kind of be our thing at the end of the day.
I like that. So you're sort of running that line between like, okay, we're okay to a certain extent, we're okay with this, the conditions, but then when you violated it, we're going to hold you accountable for that. And this is what this looks like for that. It's doing that. I like that. Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. I think group number three, I can't now read my handwriting. Okay. I think Sophia have you down for group number three. So I'm gonna put your scenario in the chat. And you are going to explain. So group number three also had a hard situation. So they were a government official and contractors were taking shortcuts because they were friends with the other politicians. And so they could expose the corruption and it would delay the project and delay water for their city, or they could not expose it and but then potentially have some harm down the line. So, Sophia, what did y'all decide to do and how did you decide it?
Yeah, this was also a little bit tricky, but first thing we did was discuss what our top values were. And for all of us, achievement was one of our top three values. But for all of us, if I remember correctly, achievement was the third value, which means that people came before, getting things done for all of us. And that means that in this case, we chose to expose the corruption because integrity and humility are important. And we decided that the best way to do that would be to have a town hall and invite other people to come in and share their ideas and democratize this process of decision making. Corruption in government is not a good thing. It does a lot of harm. And while it is unfortunate that there will be a delay in getting these services and potentially a hit to the economy, we know that in the large majority of cases, economies are fairly resilient and they will recover. You can always make more money, but if you cause harm to people and you break their trust, that is so much harder to recover than, any potential financial losses. So we decided to tell the truth and gather the community together for town hall, share their ideas, and probably try to organize some mutual aid to meet immediate needs as well.
I love it. I love it. That's a really good thinking that through about, okay, here's going to be the short-term impact, but the long-term value, what we're trying to go for, and here's how we're going to mitigate it in the moment and how we're going to include voices. That's great. All right. Group number 4, Medina, we're going to go to you next for group number 4. This one's also interesting. So this one is going to be your mayors of a city and a company is approaching you to build a major sort of factory there, and you have an unemployment rate of 12% in your city, but in building the factory would potentially damage the local environment. So what do you do? How do you balance value and economics in the environment? So Medina, we'll go to you if you can hear me and you want to come off mute.
Lucky me. Okay, so we decided to go with not building the company because we realized that it's gonna damage the whole place. So at the end of the day, the company might not even last that long, and the jobs are gonna be gone either way. So the values we chose was like accountability and wisdom because we're the mayor, so the city is in our hands basically. And wisdom because it's the right choice is basically telling you do it, not do it, don't do it because at the end of the day, the city might not even like last for like a long time.
I love it. Okay, so you're thinking about again like long-term benefits, like what does it actually look like, and accountability is really essential within that, and the wisdom. I like that idea of like wisdom is something bigger than just like knowledge of the moment, and I think that's really really powerful. Awesome. Okay, I want to own that we're about to come up on 8, and I'm sorry I missed time this at the beginning. So if you all can stay on for, I will promise I'll wrap this up in less than 10 minutes. But if you need to get off, I totally respect it because that's on me. So if you need to get off for something else, feel free. But I would love to go to the group number 5 and then do a quick wrap up for the takeaways for this. So for group number 5, I'm gonna go to you, Joshua, to talk about this. So group number 5, the scenario was you're a student leader who's organizing a protest on your campus. And after the peaceful protest, though, you're divided as a group to decide what to do. Some of you want to go talk to the dean. Others of you want to defy the protest limit and stay longer to try to put pressure on the president to talk to you. So here is this again. So here's your group number 5. Go ahead, Joshua. What do y'all just do, and how do you approach value-based leadership with it?
One of the values was compassion and like kindness. I think it's important to realize that people have different comfort levels, and it's important to respect that. So our kind of idea was like, whatever you want to do, you can go do that. You can, if you want to go protest or just talk to the dean, and that's how what you're comfortable with, you can do that. But if you're wanting to see more action, there will be other people supporting you with that as well. So give a choice to people.
I love that. That's great. I love the idea you gave people the agency to decide. So you're centralizing compassion and sort of thinking that, but giving people the agency to decide within that and say, this is how we're going to model it, but we're not going to impose this on you. We're going to let you sort of get to make the decision from that. All right. So unknowingly, you all really killed this. This is great. You actually made this super easy for us for the rest of the rest of the time, because one of the things that's really cool about value-based leadership and how Morgan and I talk about it is that ultimately value-based leadership is really about a couple of things. The first thing is that it is about encouraging transparency and fostering open communication, particularly around based on your shared beliefs. So those of you who are like, hey, you know what? We can't do this. We can't just act like we didn't see the regulation or see the faulty material. We have to be transparent. We have to be accountable. And we have to also open up the conversation. We recognize we're not the only ones who are going to be affected by this. So how can we increase more voices in the space? So value-based leadership is always being open and honest of like, these are the values of which we're operating from. We're going to be honest and transparent and accountable to you, but we also want to hear where you're coming from as well, which goes to that compassion piece Joshua was talking about. Value-based leadership also is always going to prioritize ethics and the social responsibility you have over your competing interests. So I love the group that's like, we want to achieve, like we're all achievers, we get that, but ultimately people come above that. So value-based leadership is going to look at something not as the outcome of like dollars and cents or impact or even like notoriety. It's going to say, are we actually valuing our responsibility collectively to each other as people? And are we prioritizing our own ethics that we believe in are important that everyone act from? It also is going to be, again, aligning with your leading with your integrity. So at the very core, value-based leadership is making sure your actions actually line up with your decisions. So that again goes into, I think, a really beautiful way of thinking about, okay, if we're actually going to say we're genuinely about the environment, when we actually have an opportunity to get easy money and make more jobs, we've actually got to align our action, say, no, unfortunately, that doesn't align with our values that we're going from. It's making sure, and when you get tempted by opportunity, or you get tempted by something that's easy, or you get tempted by something that seems really appealing, you ultimately come back and say, I need to align my action and my decision based on my value first, rather than something that's shiny and quick and easy. And then a lot of you all did a really beautiful thing around thinking about long-term impact versus short-term gains. Now, this is not always easy. Sometimes that you do have to make short-term sacrifices to make people safe and keep them going and keep them operating. But a lot of you focus around the idea of like, we have to make a hard decision, but ultimately, even if it's going to hurt our town or our university or our organization short term, the long term matters more, because even if we succeed in the short term, if we lose the integrity of who we are, or we lose the environment, or we lose the people, that matters. Like, what's the point? So focusing on long-term impact is a huge trait of value-based leadership. And then lastly, going to Joshua and their group's example, is about leading by example. So value-based leadership is ultimately about, you know what, we're not going to necessarily tell you what you to do, but we're going to model a way that we think is the right way to go forward. And you can choose to follow us or not, but we're going to be transparent and honest about how we're going about it and why. And so by leading as value-based leaders, leading by example, you're going to inspire people much more through your action than just your words or just your quota or your motto. So those are sort of the common traits that we think are value-based leadership. But the one other concept I want to throw at you is the idea of congruence. So this model at the bottom is called the Social Change Leadership Model. The Social Change Leadership Model is a great book. There's a whole sort of philosophy behind it. Some of you may have heard of this, some of you haven't. If you haven't, I encourage you to look it up. But the social change leadership model basically says social change leaders, particularly college students, have a sort of a framework of operating out of values. And they say, but this framework of values, you have to start with individual values, then you have values as a group, and then you have values as a society. The individual values, the things that they say are most important for college student social change agents, are one, consciousness of self. Basically, who are you? What are you about? All of you tonight chose your values and said, this is what I'm about. This is what I want to sort of operate from. The second thing, though, was congruence. And congruence is ultimately the people, like we said, who their actions are consistent with their beliefs and their words. We all know people in our lives, in society, etc., who talk beautifully but do not back it up. But going to Emma's point earlier on, we also know people who are very quiet behind the scenes, who are doing the leadership day to day, even without the title or without the praise, but they're consistent in who they are and how they act. So acting from a sense of congruency is not only being aware of what your values are, but making sure that your small choices each day are trying your best to line up with that. It doesn't mean you're perfect. It doesn't mean you're always going to get it right, but it means you're going to try to operate from a person of integrity and congruence versus a person of just opportunity and promotion. Acting from congruence versus just opportunity or competition. Okay. So this is the sort of the thing we want to sort of go to at the very least. all of you as Newman Fellows have been rewarded at some point for acting with values and integrity at some point. Maybe you called it that, maybe you didn't. But the thing that's difficult as you go about and go into the future and go, et cetera, is it's really tempting to have other people impose their values on you, or have other organizations or other things that are tempting, like that free scholarship or that free opportunity, or et cetera. But you just have to sacrifice one or two values. Now, every situation is different. I'm not going to tell you there's a universal way to do it. But what I can tell you is that the people who I often worked with, both as college change agents, as young adults, and even the elders in the community, that people who are most consistent in change making long term, and the people who also tend to be able to sort of sustain themselves, are people who act from a value-based mindset or a value-based leadership method. So that's why we want to introduce that to you all tonight and encourage you, because you're about to come about really hard times where you got to make hard choices, not only literally this semester, but literally going forward into what's next for you. And if nothing else, we want you to take away from this that there is a framework out there that can center, starting with yourself, what you care about, what you value in the world, and doing it and making the hard decision. While they may not pay off in the short term, long term, it will pay off with who's following you and your impact in the world. So this last exercise I'm going to encourage you to do on your own for time, because we're about out of time. It's called It's called the value-based wallet size reminder. And what I encourage students to do, thinking about this, so you consider this like your homework, although it's not really homework, I'm not going to grade it, is we encourage students to think about your values going from this workshop. And I want you to think about 3 behaviors that you think actually support that value. I want you to think about 2 people who sort of can hold you accountable and support you in enacting that value. And then I ultimately want you to think about 1 commitment you want to make leaving from this workshop or going into the next few weeks about actually living this value going forward. So again, it's what I typically have students do is you take a small sheet of paper like this, you take a wallet size, you fold it in half, something you can put in your wallet or your purse, and I have them draw this out. So in hard times when you're not sure where to go or where to start, you have a quick reminder that you can look at and reflect on. And again, we have as example of this, what this looks like in practice is if you took the value loyalty, which is a big value of my family generally. I came up with 3 practices of like, this is me enacting and embodying my value of loyalty. It means I keep people's word. I consider people with other experience. And then I also choose people and causes I'm loyal to very carefully. So that for me is 3 ways I embody what it means to be loyal. The 2 people in my life who hold me accountable are my best friend Davis and my mom, who are the people who I can go to when I'm feeling conflicted or not knowing what to do. They are the people who can really test me and make sure I'm actually embodying my value. And then the 1 commitment I choose to make is to really evaluating what am I loyal to and why, and to also make sure that I really stay committed to something, even when it's hard or difficult, or even when the friendship is going through a hard patch, or even if the organization is going through a rough stretch. What is the thing I could do to stay committed to it? So again, the exercise I encourage you all to do on your own time is the 3-2-1, where you think about your values tonight, your top 2 or your top 3, and ask yourself, what are 3 behaviors that really support this value? What are 3 things I do when I'm in line with that value? Who are 2 people that really hold me accountable and also, or maybe model this value that I want to remember if I'm struggling in acting this? And then ultimately, what's the 1 small action I want to do that's going to sort of remind me if I'm doing this 1 thing, I know that I'm acting as best I can in integrity with my values. So what's the 1 commitment I want to make? So that's this short exercise. I'll leave you all for homework for now. Okay. So the last quote I'm going to leave you with, and then we'll wrap up, is this is again going back to Brene Brown and the Dare to Lead book. And I love this quote because she says, there are no guarantees in the arena. We will all struggle. We will even fail. There will be times of darkness. But if we are clear about the values that guide us in our efforts to show up and be seen, we will always be able to find the light. We will know what it means to live brave. So for all of you, I hope you choose the opportunity to live bravely by living from your values first, no matter your title, no matter your stage of life, no matter your circumstance, that you ground yourself in value-based leadership, not because it's easy, but because it is going to allow you to live a life of congruence and commitment to the things that matter to you the most. So with that, Quick reminders is for as we wrap up, if you've not already, please check out Morgan's email. Mini grant applications and Change Agent Coalition applications are due November 10th. The Newman Mentor, if you've not already met with them, please try to meet with them soon. If you don't have a mentor, let me know. Connect on the WhatsApp group if you've not already, in the LinkedIn group. I'll let more people into the LinkedIn group if you're waiting on being let in. And then the next workshop is going to be coalition building with a national coalition expert. That's going to be determined in November. I think it's going to be November 14th, but we'll confirm that later on. All right. That is all I've got for you. I know I'll send out these resources afterwards as well. So these are resources if you're interested in diving deeper into the leadership social change model, Brene Brown's Living Our Values exercise, or these ethical dilemmas. I'll gladly share these out. But for now, again, thank you all so much for coming. If you will have questions or want to talk about this more in depth, I'll hang back. But otherwise, you all are good to go. And I hope that whatever you face this week, you can face it values first, centered in who you are, and know that no matter what happens, no matter the outcome, we will have your back as long as you're trying your best to lead from a value-centered place. And with that, you all are good to go. Thank you all for staying on late. Thanks for being understanding as I ran long. All right,
Thank
y'all.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Steve.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.